Hey guys, Constance here from Cosmopolitan So I am getting ready to get dinner started. I am doing a super easy roast beef recipe that'll be going here in the Instant Pot. But before I start that, I've got to show you what just came out of the oven. Look at that gorgeous loaf of bread. Oh, I am totally getting back into baking. I have not baked like this in a very long time. But I thought, you know what? I'm gonna make some challah. Challah! Alright, so the recipe that I'm making is for peppered beef, and it is an Instant Pot recipe. I will confess to you, I do not use my Instant Pot very often. I don't really like it as much as I do my slow cooker. I think slow cookers give a much better texture when it comes to things like roast beef or pork roast. It slow cooks it. Whereas the pressure cooker, the Instant Pot, you don't get that breakdown of texture like you do when you slow cook something. However, I do like the way this particular recipe comes out, and so this is one that I do make in the Instant Pot, and it's super easy to make. And of course, because it's an Instant Pot recipe, it doesn't take very long to make. Now, when I originally published this recipe, I actually published it on my other website, Wholesome Skillet, which was a blog that I launched last year, and I loved the idea of having a blog that was completely like grain-free, super healthy and all that, but I just didn't have time to run two completely separate websites. Not if I plan on doing the YouTube thing. So I have been gradually moving all of those recipes to Cosmopolitan Cornbread, leaving redirects so that if people have the old link saved, they can find it in the new one. And this is one of the recipes that I had over there. So let me swing you around here a little bit. Alright, so when I published it, I had certain ingredients that I used, and so this is very similar to the original recipe. I am making a couple modifications based just upon what I have on hand. Now, originally this called for a few Cubanelle peppers and some bell peppers. I am using 4 Cubanelles this time and 1 green bell pepper because that's what I had available to me in the garden right now. I didn't want to go to the grocery store and buy peppers when I've got a whole... There's probably a couple thousand peppers out there in my garden right now, if you count all of the Chinese 5-color and all of the Tabasco peppers and all of that. And we're seeing a potential frost on the forecast here in the next week or so, and possibly a freeze. So I have already preserved a ton of peppers, frozen peppers, pickled peppers, just simply canned peppers. So I'm just trying to use up as many fresh ones as I can. So I am just cutting the peppers into strips. And I'm using a mix of my Cubanelles here. I've got a green one that I just diced, I've got a fully red one here, and then I've got kind of an in-between one. So I just grabbed the first ones I came to over on the out in the pepper patch. So now in addition to the peppers, I am cutting an onion into strips. And the original recipe called for a red onion, but I didn't have any red onions in the house, so I'm just using a classic yellow onion. And here's a little bit of a tip. When you're slicing onions into strips, if you want the onions to get super tender, you cut the onions into rings. If you want them to actually still hold a little bit of their texture, you cut them into strips vertically. So depending on how you want your onions to turn out, that's how you would cut them. I don't know the science of this. I don't know why it works out that way, but if you cut across the rings, they get tender, and if you cut vertically that way, end to end, they hold a little more texture. And if you know the science behind that, I would actually love, I'd love to read it. Alright, so I'm going to drizzle a little bit of oil into the Instant Pot here. I'm using avocado oil, but you can use some coconut oil or some extra virgin olive oil, whichever you prefer to use. And I am going to press the saute button. And while that oil is heating up, I've got a chuck roast here. And I'm going to go ahead and season that with some salt and pepper. Alright. And then when the oil is nice and hot, you want it kind of shimmering around, but you don't want it quite smoking. So once it gets nice and hot, I will put this chuck roast in seasoned side down, and then I'll go ahead and season the other side of it as well. Alright, so my oil is nice and hot. I'm going to go ahead and just drop this in. So now I'm going to let this sit here and do its thing. I'm not going to try and move this chuck roast. I'm going to let it sear in the Instant Pot on the saute setting for about 4 or 5 minutes. Then I'll take some tongs and I'll turn it over and I'll sear the other side. But first, let me season this one. You could season both sides before you put it in the Instant Pot, but I find it's just as easy to do it this way. Alright, so I've got it seared on both sides, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the cancel button. Let that just chill out. And now I'm going to take the gorgeous onions and peppers, or onion and peppers, and I'm just going to layer these all over the top. Hopefully you can hear me. Alright, so now I need to add in some liquid. This is 3/4 of a cup of beef broth or beef stock, whichever you got on hand will work just fine. And then there is 3 cloves of garlic that are minced up in here, along with 1/4 of a cup of white wine vinegar. Now I'm just going to pour this in. So I'm going to close the lid. Make sure your vent is closed back here. I'm going to press the manual button, and I'm going to set this to 45 minutes, and you can tell that says 4. Last time I used my Instant Pot was for hard cooked eggs, which, you know, like I said in the beginning, I don't use my Instant Pot a whole lot. But when it comes to hard-boiled eggs, hard-cooked eggs, this thing is worth its weight in gold. I am just telling you, it is the only way I have ever been able to cook hard-cooked eggs and actually be able to get the peel off without demolishing them. And I have tried every trick out there. None of them ever worked for me. But that does. So now I am just going to let the Instant Pot do its thing. And I will come back after a while. Alright, so the peppered beef is done cooking. It actually finished about 24 minutes ago. And it just kind of slow cooks once it's finished. And this smells absolutely fantastic. I wish you could smell it. So now there's a couple different ways that you can serve this. You can cut the meat up and just serve it like you would roast beef with the wonderful peppers and onions. You can also shred the meat and serve it over a bowl of rice, or you can take that shredded beef and onions and peppers and all that and put it inside a tortilla, and it's sort of like an Instant Pot version of fajitas. So there's lots of different ways that you can serve this, and it's really however you want to do it. The meat is super tender, there's a ton of flavor in there, and it's just delicious. So this is one of the recipes that I have moved over to cosmopolitancornbread.com, and if you are watching on YouTube, I will put a link to that recipe down below this video, and over there you can print it out, you can save it on Pinterest, or however you like to save your recipes. So thanks for joining me here in the homestead kitchen. My name is Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread, and I'll talk to y'all next time.